Get ready for more valuable financial insights from Northern California's premier retirement income planners, Ahmad and Jim Files, owners of Peak Financial Freedom Group. For more information, go to peakfin.com. And now, here's Dan and Jim.
We'd like to welcome all the listeners today, and thank you for being here with us. We know a lot of you have listened for years. We know a lot of you are current clients, and you listen just to stay up to date on everything we're talking about to help you make the best decisions with retirement. And we have a lot of people that have listened for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and then something triggers in their own mind or their heart or their stomach that says, hey, I think I need to have some questions answered. I think I might need a second opinion. I know I need a written plan, and I'd like to get some help from these guys, Dan and Jim. If you need some help, if it fits timing and what you're planning, just give us a call, dial pound 250 on your cell phone and say the keyword money. Pound 250 and say the keyword money, and you can meet with us. You can have a free consultation. We'll build a plan for you if we both agree that that would be a good idea, and there's no cost and there's no obligation for us to build a plan. You get to take it home with you to study it before you even decide if you want to become our client. So we just figure that's a really good way to help people. So give us a call, pound 250, say the keyword money, and then see if you qualify for one of those types of meetings, and it'll be painless for you. What we want to talk about today will be some things that we think are first and foremost on people's minds right now. And the biggest thing that's on their mind is they're worried about their money, and they have anxiety about their money. Some of them feel so much anxiety that they can't sleep or they're restless. Some of them have so much worry and fear, it affects their daily life for themselves, with coworkers, with their spouses, with their families. And we see it because these people come in for second opinions all the time, and they are so freaked out literally about their money. Then it takes time, but as we meet with them multiple times to create a plan, we create this plan that now alleviates not all of their freaked outness, not all of their anxiety, but I always estimate that we reduce worries and fears and anxiety somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90% of when they came in the first time. Is that fairly accurate, do you think?
I think so, because everybody, if you're getting, the closer you get to retirement, or if you're in your retirement, you have stress. If you're pulling income off your portfolio, you have to have stress because the markets will ebb and flow. They go up, they go down. There's uncertainties around the world. There's 2 major wars right now. We have a new presidency taking over, a new administration, I should say, with a new president. We have all kinds of interest rates are right now volatile. Are the Fed's going to lower rates? Are they going to increase rates? How will that affect the stock market? Those are worries that you all have, we all have. And what you have to do is figure out, okay, I'm going to have those worries. There's no way around it. But if I'm in retirement, I need to make sure my income is stable and it's going to be there so that I can do the things I want to do in retirement and live the life I've dreamed to live in retirement. So you have to be able to position your money for risk mitigation. How do I reduce the risk, number one, in my portfolio as I'm getting into retirement? And number 2, how do I maximize my income so that I can enjoy my retirement regardless of those things I'm worried about, Dan? And that's what we do here.
Across the board. If I think everyone always, tries to define their firm and what you do. And we always state specifically, we help people stop worrying about their money. And that's key, because when you're 40, you don't necessarily worry about your money the way you do when you're 60. And it makes sense because at 40, you have 20 years before you have to start worrying about it. And at 40, you save all your money so that you get to a point at 60, so you have less worries. But every single person that comes through the doors that's not our client, as we find out where they're at right now, and let's say they're 60, 62, 65, 58, whatever, and they're either retired or getting ready to retire, every one of them worries more about their money now than they did when they started saving. And they started saving for the specific purpose to worry about their money less. And everyone driving right now will also agree that that's how they feel. They worry more now. Well, at age 20, if you started saving, you had no money. What was there to worry about? Nothing. What if you have $2 million or $3 million saved now? Is there something to worry about?
Sure there is. I'll give you an interesting sighting of a new client that we're working with right now that came in about 2 months ago. And they came in and they had a big brokerage company that was managing their money. They had developed a friendship with the advisor there. They had close to $2 million in their portfolio. and the clients were going to retire in 3 months. They are now retired now. They are our client now. But when they came in, I asked him, I said, do you have a plan? He said, yeah, we have a plan. I said, okay, let me look at it. And he said, what do you mean, let me look at it? And here it is right here. And he had given me his statement. I said, well, that's not your plan. That's just a bunch of statements. He said, no, my advisor said that's my plan. I'm in 60% equities and 40% bonds. I said, that's not a plan. That's your investment portfolio. I said, well, what did your advisor tell you about retirement now that you're going to retire in 3 months? He said, well, I'll be just fine. And I said, well, how much income can you take out of your plan so that you'll be fine? And he said, the advisor said, I can take off approximately 6%. I said, oh, really? And how does he support that? Oh, he said, I'll be just fine. In other words, he said, you'll just be fine. He gave you your statements. You don't have a plan. I said, I guess so, he said. Well, when we did the analysis for him, I went back, they're both 63. I ran their portfolio out as if they were going to live until 88. We ran it through and I said, if you're taking 6% off in the form of income off that portfolio that your broker's managing right now, let's go back 25 years, back to 2000. Let's see how that would have worked. And when we did the math, they were going to run out of money in 13 years. They were going to be broke. When they saw this, they were flabbergasted. But when we do this, Dan, everybody had the same feeling when they see the data, right? You're not just going to be fine if somebody tells you you're going to be fine. You better have it in writing, understand where your money's coming from, what's guaranteed, what's not guaranteed, when will the income start, when will it stop, will it increase, will it decrease, what's your after-tax income, what's your budget, what about inflation? You have to understand all of these things and find a firm that does that for you so that you have a comprehensive plan in place before or if you are retired as soon as possible.
Well, the goal, as you're stating there, is how do you help those clients reduce the risk and the fear that they have? They came to us because they didn't feel comfortable. They have an advisor. The advisor thinks they're comfortable because the advisor says, don't worry, you're okay. You can take out 6%. Well, what we find is a lot of times advisors aren't lying. They just don't give you the full picture. So if the stock market, how they're invested now, goes straight up between now and the time they pass away 30 years down the road, they could take out 6%. Yes. They can. So that part is true, what the advisor says. The problem is you have to factor in what we think is the fact that the market is going to be volatile because since 1929, the stock market has always gone down an average of 39% every 5 years. If you now factor that in, what's the chance you can take out 6%? It's zero with your money lasting forever. So you have to now take that safe withdrawal rate that advisor gives you of 6, and you have to cut it in half and say at 3%, then with all these types of losses going on in the market, then you probably have a high probability, 95% chance that you won't run out, but it's half as much. And half as much isn't going to do anything for their budget.
But also, Dan, you have to understand that when people are retired versus not retired, if you were in a 60-40 portfolio, and when you weren't retired at 45 years old, the market went down by 30, 40, or 50%. You kind of hung in there. You could handle it, right? You had less money because you were younger and you had a paycheck. But now let's fast forward and you're 65 and you have a 60-40 portfolio and the market go down 30, 40, or 50%. I will assure you, you will have a different perspective on hanging in there. You will probably end up getting out at the wrong time because you won't be able to handle the stress because you don't have a paycheck any longer. You have to be taking income off your portfolio. When you have dramatic drawdowns in your portfolio and they can last for months or years, the stress becomes too much. And that's where the mistake gets made, Dan. They yank money where they wouldn't have yanked it when they were younger. And all of a sudden, they have a real big problem.
I know, across the board. And it's just because they weren't positioned properly right now. They were positioned properly if they were 30, 35, 40, 45, no problem. Yeah. Take the risk. And we're not saying you do anything wrong to be aggressive while you're accumulating assets. But at this point, you are no longer in the asset accumulation game. You are in the asset preservation against large loss gain, and you're in the creation of the highest level of income that's dependable and guaranteed for as long as you live game. Reduce risk and create income. And if you think about it, that's the only thing that will help you stop worrying as much about your money. Because right now, as you're facing retirement, that black tunnel that you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, because the big problem is how in the heck are you going to create income from your assets if you have too much risk and you know you can't. So anxiety about money is caused from one, thinking in your gut that you're taking too much risk, because every single person knows if they suffer too big a loss in retirement, they know there's a high probability their retirement is ruined. It's not just hurt, it's ruined. So we have to now help them reduce the risk. How do you do that? Well, the first thing we do is we'll do a risk analysis. We're going to find out based on their statements, how much risk do they truly have? Meaning if the market has another 2008 downturn, or we go through another bond debacle like we did in the early 2000s, what's going to happen to their portfolio? And we find on average, right now, if you come in, you probably have at least a 40% risk in your portfolio. Well, what does that mean? That means if you have $2 million in your portfolio, you better be prepared to lose $800,000 if we go through another 2008. And what would that do then to someone's chances of success if they go from $2 million down to $1.2 million of asset value?
They will demolish their portfolio. They will demolish it. But they don't think that, Dan. The consumers that comes in here, they come in here every day. We have client meetings all day long. People listening to us on the radio, people seeing us on television, people coming into our workshops. They come in here. We're meeting with clients every single day, and nobody has a perspective. Nobody has insight on how much risk they have because they've been told by their advisor that they don't have too much risk, or they're going to be fine, or the market will recover. Don't worry about it. You'll just be fine. But it happens, and it happens unexpectedly. The markets go down, and they will always go down, and we don't know how long they'll be down. We don't know how long it's going to take to recover. We don't know how much you're going to lose, and we're putting money in the market too. We have the same problem, right? There's no way around that crystal ball stuff. Nobody knows that answer. That is why we believe categorically you need to have money developed or positioned in different buckets to do different things. That is why we put money in these three buckets that we'll talk about a little bit later on this show.
You're back with Dan Ahmad and Jim Files, the Peak Financial Freedom Hour. And today we're talking about the worries, anxiety, people that are either retired or getting ready to retire have about their money. And the first topic we covered was if they're taking too much risk. And some people are worried they're taking too much risk. Some people don't even know, but either way, we have to now take the first step of doing a full risk analysis of your portfolio to find out where you stand. We can't make any recommendations if we're going to be working as your advisory representative. We're going to be working and acting as a fiduciary. We can't make any recommendations unless we know exactly where you're at. And we won't do that until we find out how much risk you're taking inside of your portfolio. And it's kind of nice to know for the first time really what's going on in your portfolio. And we can make it very easy to understand. We use sophisticated software, but the software summarizes everything down to one page, and it shows you how much growth potential you have in your portfolio, which is good to know, and how much risk you have in your portfolio, which is good to know. Those two things pretty much are what consumers want to know. So we then look at what are your overall goals in your retirement life and what you want for your lifestyle. And we will now use the three buckets to allocate into each one of the buckets how much money we need to make your plan work. And that will then show how much risk we have in your new plan. And I would say on average, the risk probably goes down somewhere between 70 and 90%. Is that?
Yep, exactly right. But again, if you're listening right now, pay close attention to this. I'll ask you a question. Just assume you were meeting with us right now, and you're in one of our conference room. And I asked you, and if you're married, I asked both you and your wife and you, how much risk do you think you have in your portfolio now? How would you answer that question? Well, most people say, I don't know, or I don't think too much, or maybe I have too much risk. And I said, okay, what do you mean by that? How much do you think you could lose if the market goes down by 40% in the future? And by the way, the market's gone down by 39% every 5 years on average since 1929. So it's going to happen again. It's going to happen multiple times. So if I asked you, how much money do you think you could lose? Let's assume you had $1 million in your portfolio, make it the math real easy. How much do you think you're going to lose? And what would you answer? You would probably say, I don't know. I'm not sure. My advisor said, I'm going to be okay. The market will recover. But if we were to show you that with your portfolio where you had 60% equities and 40% bonds, that you have a 40% risk factor, how would that make you feel? In other words, if you had $1 million, if you lost $400,000, which is 40% of $1 million right now today, how would that make you and your spouse feel? What would you do? Where would you draw income from? And that's just one of 100 questions we're going to go through here in the income process or income planning process, because you need to have that data. It's not something that, I wish I had that data. It's you need to have that data to structure your portfolio correctly, Dan.
Well, think about it. Not only like you're asking, and you have to answer that question, how would you feel? And just as important, how would your spouse feel if that happens where you lose 40%? But simply because you didn't have this data in front of you before, you wouldn't do anything about it, which means you would continue to be having that amount of risk. So if you did receive this data, now what does that allow you to do about it? it allows you now to put a plan together that will reduce the risk. And we have what we call the Peak Financial golden rule of 5 to 10%, which simply means at retirement, we don't want your risk projection to be any more than 5 to a maximum of 10%. And I estimate that right now, 95% of our clients, when we do a risk analysis of their with plan, meaning what we design, 95% of our clients have 5% or less risk in their portfolio, meaning if the market goes down to 50%, they're projected to still have a loss, but instead of 50%, they're projected to have a 5% loss. So if they have a $1 million portfolio instead of a $500,000 loss, we're projected not to be risk-free, but we're projected to have about a $50,000 loss. And a $50,000 loss can be recovered from in retirement. A $500,000 loss cannot be recovered in retirement.
And we're using very specific strategies, very specific financial instruments. Again, we use 3 buckets, right? We use a cash bucket. If the market goes down, depending on how much money you have in cash, it's not going to be affected, right? You have no market risk. Where we're using guaranteed buckets. So when the market go down, your income will not be affected and that bucket will not be affected. You have no market risk in that. We are putting money in the market. We can't stop you from losing money in the market, although we're using very specific strategies. We use what is called fail-safe software that runs every day. It doesn't stop you from losing money. What we're trying to do is stop big losses by stopping out of the market. In other words, triggers go off and the money is mechanically moved into cash or ultra-short U.S. Treasury bonds. Again, it doesn't eliminate the risk in that bucket, but we're trying to reduce the risk in that bucket. But when you average all 3 buckets, cash bucket, no risk. Guarantee bucket, no market risk. Money to market, risk, but we're trying to mitigate that risk. That is how we get your risk factor less than 10%.
Well, I want you to think about something for a second based on what Jim just said, and that is your current advisor, even yourself. If you are actually planning or someone's actually planning for your best interest and can put that in writing, would that advisor and or would you put your money in all one bucket, or would you put some money in the gold bucket for liquidity and safety and access, some money in the red bucket with risk but for higher growth, and some money in the green bucket for 100% protection against stock market losses and income guaranteed for as long as you live? Would you then just do one bucket, with most advisors saying put it all in the red bucket, the growth bucket? Or would you be looking after your best interest by spreading the money around into the 3 buckets? And your best interest in almost all cases will be best looked after by using all 3 buckets, because it's more prudent to have true diversification in these 3 buckets, unlike your current portfolio of mutual funds or stocks or bonds, which really doesn't provide you true diversification because they all lately have gone up and down together. These 3 buckets will be diversified because they do not act the same way, Jim.
It's behavior, right? How do these behave in both good and bad markets? In good markets, yes, we behave with positive performance. In bad markets, in the market, you're going to behave with poor performance. That is why we don't want all the money in that bucket. Now, you get to decide how much money you want in that bucket, but you need to become educated on other strategies so you can make an intelligent decision for both you and your spouse, if you're married, for your future, so that you will weight these buckets depending on what you're trying to achieve. What type of return are you trying to achieve? What type of liquidity do you need? How much income do you need? You want the income guaranteed or not guaranteed? All these are all components in putting together a plan for you that's going to work.
You're back with Ahmad and Jim Files at the Peak Financial Freedom Hour, and today we are talking about money and anxiety and the worries that people have as they are either in retirement or are approaching retirement. If you're 40 or 45, you probably don't have these same fears, but as you get close to retirement, you have to start worrying about your asset base, because you know intuitively, you know in your gut that your assets are what will now create the income that will allow you to live the lifestyle that you hope for at retirement. And you want to be able to remain at that same lifestyle for as long as you live. You don't want the income to run out. You don't want it to decrease. You don't want it to stop for any reason. You know you have to plan that. Well, you know how to be a good saver. That's how you got here. All of our clients, every single one of our clients is a good saver. That's why they get in front of us, because they have assets they need to plan for retirement success. And if they're not a good saver, then they don't need to meet with us. But if you're a great saver, it's very hard to do 2 things. One, think about spending the money because you saved it. The second is to create a plan that will provide you dependable, even guaranteed income that will last for as long as you live, which will help to alleviate even eliminate your fear about running out of money, because that's the number one fear most people have. And our green bucket, we have our gold bucket bank, red bucket stock market, green bucket is the guaranteed principal and the guaranteed income, the annuity bucket. The green bucket is what will provide you a written contractual guarantee that your income will never end from that bucket for as long as you live, which is the only way we can help anyone stop worrying that their income will run out during retirement.
You know, the question is really simple. Let's just assume you were in our office today and you met with Dan and I, and we went through this process with you. And by the way, it doesn't happen in one day. There are multiple meetings for us to put this together because there's a lot of work that we're doing in the back office each time you leave and come back for the next meeting. But let's assume your budget was $10,000 a month. That's how much you're spending right now, which means you're going to have enough after-tax income this month for $10,000 a month, right, in order to maintain your lifetime retirement. Now, inflation, every year you're going to have inflation. If inflation is 3% and your budget's $10,000 a month, that's $120,000 a year times 3%. You better have $126,000 next year of after-tax income because you're going to have inflation. You have to plan for that. You have to see that for the next 30 years. And we gave you a choice. If it's $10,000 a month, let's assume you and your spouse have $5,000 a month of guaranteed income coming in from Social Security. And by the way, Social Security is an annuity. It's a lifetime income stream. Then we gave you a choice. Do you want the other $5,000 to be guaranteed to come in every month, no matter how long you live for the rest of your life? Or do you want that money to be not guaranteed, that it may be there and it may not be there? What would be your answer? And your answer would be, if you're like 99% of our client base out there, they want enough income that's guaranteed to maintain their lifestyle, enough income to maintain inflation and how that's going to impact their lifestyle, and enough guaranteed income so they can do some extra things every month. And then once you understand this, then you can put as much money in the stock market as you possibly want. You can have as much risk as you need in the portfolio because you don't have to worry about the income, Dan.
Well, you simply do what you're talking about there, and that is segregating out how you invest each of the buckets to meet the specific goals. What does that mean? Well, let's create a budget, like you said, and let's say the budget is $10,000 a month. If the budget is $10,000 a month, the first thing we have to do in the planning process is create an income stream that won't just generate $10,000 a month, that will, like you talked about, generate more than $10,000 a month. So let's say we need to generate $14,000 of net income after taxes per month, which gives them $4,000 more to spend. And that then can be spent. You can save it in the bank. You can gift it to kids and grandkids. You can do anything you want with those excess dollars. That's 50 grand a year of more travel. But let's say we create this plan of 14,000. Do we really want much of any of that 14,000 to not be guaranteed? And if you ask anyone, they're going to say no.
Nope.
They're going to say no. And guess what? Every advisor out there, guess what everyone else on the radio is telling you to do? They're telling you, oh, it's okay. Leave your income to chance from the stock market. It's okay to have all your money in these diversified portfolios because long-term, everything will work out. Well, what if it doesn't? What if the stock market does go down 39% every 5 years like it has since 1929? What's the chance that plan's going to work? And the answer is very, 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 very low, if at all. So the goal ends up being, how do we now create that budget and then create enough income on a guaranteed basis? Ask yourself this. If you right now let's say you have $3 million of assets saved versus you having a pension of $150,000 from the state, which one would most people choose? And the studies has shown that if you had that choice, you would always choose the $150,000 pension guaranteed from the state, because then you don't have to worry about it running out.
Exactly right. And, think about this concept. Let's go backwards. So let's say you're 30 years old, 40, 50 years old. You're raising a family. You have a mortgage on your house. And your advisor told you, let's assume your budget was $10,000 a month, like we're describing right now. But let's say you were only making $5,000 a month at your job, but you had a budget of $10,000, and your advisor was to tell you, oh, it's okay. Go into your portfolio and pull out the extra $5,000 every month to maintain your lifestyle. How would that make you feel? You would say to yourself, that is crazy. Why would I do that? I'm either going to have to lower my budget, or I'm going to have to go out and get another job, or my wife's going to have to go to work for me, or my spouse is, and we're going to have to generate enough income on a guaranteed basis to maintain our budget. It is no different in retirement. all we're telling you is generate enough guaranteed income to maintain your budget and then play with the rest of the money. You can have it in the market just like when you were working, whereby you had a paycheck, which was your guarantee. Well, it's not guaranteed, but it was your income source. And then you had your money in your 401k that was your growth. We're not saying anything different. We're just saying you have to replace your paycheck once you retire, and this is how we do it.
Well, anyone who's looking after your best interest, how can they say that what you just said, Jim, is wrong? They can't.
No.
Because you have to, no matter what, focus on one thing in retirement, and that is creating more income on a guaranteed basis than you need to spend each month, because that will go back to what we're talking about, money and anxiety. If you had more money, if you had $4,000 more net income after taxes coming in than you need to spend, would you worry less or more about your money? I guarantee you'd worry less about your money. You're back with Dan Ahmad and Jim Files, the Peak Financial Freedom Hour. And today we're talking about money and anxiety and the things people worry about and how we help them get over a majority of these worries. We can't eliminate how much everyone worries 100% because human beings are worriers. But on average, I estimate that we reduce how much people worry about their money anywhere from 80 to 90%. That's substantial, because you think about then what worrying about your money does to you, your lifestyle, your psychology, your relationships, your ability to enjoy life. Worry is what crushes it. So if we can get rid of 80 to 90% of the worries, it means you're going to now live 80 to 90% better life. What if, like almost everyone who comes in, what if you are a person that worries about your money simply because you feel that you don't know a lot about money? What if you feel like most people do, that everyone else knows more about their money than you do? What if you're like most people that come in, even though you've actually been a good saver, no one has told you, quantified, that you have actually already succeeded in attaining goals that will allow you to have a successful retirement? Well, that means you just don't know enough about your money, and you probably even feel ashamed and embarrassed. And sometimes you won't even call us. You won't even call us for an appointment because you feel ashamed and embarrassed that you haven't done the right job or you made all these mistakes. Well, don't think that way. Think right now that wherever you're at in life, whatever you've done, however much you have saved, this is what you have saved, and you better make the best decisions from this point on. And if you need help, just dial pound 250 on your cell phone, say the keyword money. We'll be glad to answer these types of questions. So one of the main things we do, I think, that helps people stop worrying about their money is make them start to understand their money. Because think about it, in life, what we worry about most, what we're fearful, aren't the things we know. They're the things we don't know. They're the things we're uncertain about. So once we can now help them understand in writing exactly how much risk they're taking, in writing how much fees they're paying, in writing where their income is going to come from and how long it's going to last, in writing how much tax they're going to pay. Once we do this, do they start now understanding their money for the first time at a very high level? And what does that do as far as their confidence?
Well, knowledge is confidence, right? If you have knowledge on any subject matter, you feel more confident. People lack knowledge about their money. They weren't taught about their money. You worked for 40 years. You weren't taught about your money other than let's make contributions to my 401k plan every 2 weeks and hope it's going to work out when I grow up. Well, you have to worry about your money. You have to worry about retirement. You have to worry about your future. You have to worry about your spouse. You have to worry about you and your spouse getting through retirement. And if you worry about it, that just means you're not fully educated. And if you don't worry about it, you don't have a plan, then I'm saying, I'll tell you, you're not educated, because you have to have a plan, not a bunch of statements, not your advisor telling you that you have a 60-40 portfolio, it's going to do fine over time. That's not a plan. You have to have something in writing to make sure that you can reduce your worrying, hopefully eliminate most of the worrying, because knowledge will satisfy that. Knowledge will take away that worry. I'll give you an example, Dan. Dan and I follow a number of economic indicators. These are published by famous people, economists, Harvard MBAs, Yale MBAs. I'll give you 2 sightings. Warren Buffett, considered one of the #1 premier investor in the world in our generation, many generations. He last year in 2024 moved $325 billion into cash. That's not million, that's billion. He sold off big stakes in companies he owned because he is worried about the overvaluation of the stock market right now. And he's done this several times in history. He does this in advance of a market drawdown or a market crash, so that he has the cash or capital to buy in at a lower price. Now, he's never been wrong on this. He doesn't know exactly when the market's going to pull back, but he knows it's going to pull back based on his data-driven analytics. Another example, Robert Scheller. He's a Harvard MBA. He's a Yale professor. He won the Nobel Prize in 2013 for what he calls his CAPE ratio analytics. It's an analytic tool he put together to forecast market downturns. There's been 5 times in history since 1871 when the stock markets dropped where this indicator has flashed red. In each 5 instances, when it flashed red, the market dropped between 20 and 89%. It is flashing red right now. It is the 6th time it's flashed red since 1871. Do those indicators not tell you that we should be concerned about money in the market? They do. They don't tell you when the market's going to go down. They're just saying the indicators are flashing red and you better be aware of it, Dan.
No, 100% across the board. And that's one of the other subjects we cover on different shows. And that is what should you be worried about, even if you're not worried about it? Right now, are you 100% sure that everything you're doing with your money is correct? And if you're retired again, you're ready to retire, 99.99% of the people we see have to answer, no, I'm actually unsure about what to do with my money now that I'm retired because I haven't really been given direction by my current advisor, by my 401k, or by my own investigations, because all I can find is how do I diversify my portfolio? How do I grow my portfolio? How do I get the highest rates of return? What are the best stocks? But there's nothing out there or no one out there that has helped me understand what do I have to do to create the income level I'm going to need to live the retirement that I've always dreamed about and get rid of my fear of running out of money. And you do that by having an advisor that specializes in asset preservation and income distribution, which is what our firm does, and an advisor that puts your entire plan in writing. Every single thing about your money in writing that you can understand at your level. And that's what we do. If you have questions, make sure you give us a call, pound 250, and say the keyword money. So the key, as we've been talking about, is to find a way to decrease how much you're worrying about your money, and that is having a plan. Just give us a call because there's no cost to meet with us. There's no cost if we develop a plan. There's no obligation that you become our client. But Jim, I think one of the main things you always talk about is everyone will always leave more educated, whether they become our client or not, after they meet with us and go through the planning process.
100%. And knowledge is the key to success in retirement. Understand how to place your money correctly to make sure you can get through retirement successfully.
And make sure, take the time to just evaluate how you feel in your head, your heart, and your gut. And if your head and your heart and your gut right now tell you everything's okay with your current plan, then there's no reason to call us. But I bet your head or your heart or your gut right now tells you there might be something you need to make some changes about, or at least learn about. In that case, give us a call. We'll be glad to help you.
For more information about Peak Financial Freedom Group or to schedule a consultation, just go to our website, peakfin.com. That's peakfin.com. And thanks for watching.